The words from the county clerk hit me like a freight truck.
Ma'am, according to our records, Daniel Morrison was declared deceased on July 18th, 2017.
I gripped the counter to keep from collapsing right there. In the municipal building, my grandson, my precious Danny, who had just celebrated his first birthday, was gone. And nobody had told me? Let me back up and tell you how I got here. My name is Margaret Morrison, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew what heartbreak was. I'd already buried my husband 10 years back, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for losing my only son, Thomas. It was a cold February night when I got the call. Tommy had been driving home from his late shift at the manufacturing plant when a drunk driver crossed the center line. The 18-wheeler crushed his little sedan like a tin can. At the hospital morgue, when they pulled back that white sheet, I kept praying it wasn't him. But that small scar above his left eyebrow from when he fell off his bike as a kid told me the truth I didn't want to face. My Tommy was 35 years old, gone in an instant. The funeral was a blur of black suits and whispered condolences. But one thing I remember crystal clear: my daughter-in-law, Miranda, or rather, my ex-daughter-in-law, since she and Tommy had divorced the year before. She sat in the corner of the funeral home, never once looking up from her phone. No tears, no emotion, just that cold, detached stare. When she finally approached me, the first words out of her mouth weren't, "I'm sorry," or "He was a good man." No, she asked, "What about the child support payments? What happens to those now?" I was too numb to respond. I just watched as she left without paying her respects, without a single prayer, without even a moment of silence for the father of her child. That cold shoulder turned away from us all. And I remember thinking, what kind of person is she? But here's what really haunted me. Where was Danny? Where was my grandson? Tommy and Miranda had gotten divorced when Danny was barely 6 months old. She got custody. Of course, courts always favor the mother. Tommy was ordered to pay $1,500 a month, and he could only see his son twice a month, Saturdays from 2 to 6, 4 hours, twice a month, to spend with his own flesh and blood. But even that measly arrangement never worked out. Miranda always had excuses. Danny had a cold. Danny was sleeping. She'd taken him to her mother's house. Every time, Tommy would drive to her apartment complex in hopeful anticipation, only to be turned away at the door. "Mom, I just want to see a picture of him," Tommy would tell me over the phone, his voice breaking. I ask her to send me photos, and she just leaves me on red. It broke my heart to hear my son sound so defeated. He was paying every penny of that child support, working overtime, picking up extra shifts, and he couldn't even get a glimpse of his boy. I tried calling Miranda myself a few times. She blocked my number. Then Tommy died, and I figured Miranda would at least bring Danny to the funeral. Let the boy say goodbye to his father. But she came alone, stayed 20 minutes, and left. In the week after Tommy's funeral, while sorting through his belongings in his small apartment, I found a notebook. Inside were Danny's milestones, recorded in my son's careful handwriting. Born 7 pounds, 2 ounce, 100 days old. 15 pounds. Favorite toy, yellow duck. Sleeping habit, makes little bunny faces. First tooth coming in. The last page made me sob. "Danny, Daddy misses you so much. We'll see each other before your first birthday, I promise." But Tommy never got that chance. And Danny's first birthday was just 2 months away. I tried calling Miranda again. This time, miraculously, she answered. Probably because the child support had stopped, and she wanted to know about the money. "Hello!" Her voice was flat, annoyed. "Miranda, it's Margaret. How's Danny doing?" A sigh. "He's fine. I'd like to come to his first birthday party. A grandmother should be there. We're keeping it small. No need for you to come. Miranda, please. Danny is my grandson. He's the only family I have left. And now that the child support stopped, what exactly are you coming for? We're living our own lives now, Margaret. Stop calling. Click. The dial tone echoed in my empty house. I sat there in Tommy's old room, surrounded by his childhood trophies and the stuffed animals I'd bought for Danny that he'd never received. They just sat there gathering, dust symbols of a relationship that would never be. I looked at the one photo I had of Danny, taken at his 100-day celebration before the divorce got ugly. Round cheeks, bright eyes, a toothless grin. My heart ached. That's when I made a decision. I would find out where they lived. I would go to Danny's first birthday, invited or not. I would see my grandson. But fate had other plans. 2 months passed. I called Miranda every few days, always straight to voicemail. I sent texts never delivered. I even drove to the apartment where she used to live with Tommy. But a young couple answered the door. They'd moved in 2 months ago. The building manager said Miranda had left in the middle of the night. Didn't even settle her final utilities. She'd vanished. July 15th came and went Danny's first birthday. I spent it alone, crying in front of his photo, wondering if he'd had a party, if he'd smashed a cake, if anyone had sung to him. I felt so helpless, so utterly alone. Then, 3 days later, I went to the county clerk's office. I'd read online that grandparents could request address information for their grandchildren under certain circumstances. It was a long shot, but I had to try. That's when the clerk typed Danny's name into the system, and her face went pale. Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but Daniel Morrison was declared deceased on July 18, 2017. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright. The room spun. I heard my own voice, distant and shaky. What? No, that's not possible. He just turned 1. I'm very sorry. It says here the cause of death was listed as accidental suffocation, household accident. Household accident. Those words stabbed into my chest like shards of glass. My grandson was dead. Had been dead for 3 days. And his own grandmother, his only living blood relative, besides. That woman had never been told. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember walking through my front door. All I remember is collapsing on the couch, clutching Danny's photo, screaming questions into the void. Why didn't she tell me? How did he die? Where is he buried? Why would she hide this from me? And then a darker thought crept in. What if it wasn't an accident? If you're finding the story compelling, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Your support helps us share more important stories like this one. Now, let's continue with what happened next. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Danny's sweet face. I kept imagining his last moments a baby, barely 1 year old, crying out for help that never came. The death certificate said accidental suffocation, but something didn't sit right. Babies Danny's age could turn their heads. They could move. How does a healthy 1-year-old suffocate in his own crib? The next morning, my hands shaking, I requested a copy of the full death report. The county clerk seemed sympathetic. Maybe she could tell I'd been crying all night. She processed it faster than usual. When I opened that envelope and read the details, my blood ran cold. Date of death, July 18, 2017, time of death. Approximately 3 p.m. Estimated location residence. Cause asphyxiation due to airway obstruction, manner accidental. But it was the medical examiner's notes that disturbed me most. Mother reported finding child unresponsive at approximately 4:15 p.m. Called 911 at 4:18 p.m. Paramedics arrived at 4:30 p.m. Child had been deceased for approximately 1 to 2 hours prior to emergency call. Mother appeared unusually calm during transport. Unusually calm. What mother stays calm when her baby is dying? I drove to County General Hospital, where the ambulance had taken Danny. At the records department, I explained who I was. Grandmother, next of kin, and after signing what felt like 100 forms, they let me see the emergency room report. The attending nurse's statement haunted me. Mother arrived carrying child. Child obviously deceased. Mother did not cry, did not scream, simply asked how long the paperwork would take. Highly unusual behavior for a parent in this situation. I found the nurse who'd written that report. Her name was Patricia, a kind-looking woman in her 50s. I remember that day, Patricia said quietly when I approached her during her break. You don't forget something like that. Most parents who lose a child, they're hysterical, inconsolable. But this woman, she just stood there, checking her phone. At one point, she asked if there was a vending machine nearby. Did she say what happened? Claimed she'd gone to take a shower, and when she came out, the baby had somehow gotten tangled in his blanket. But Patricia hesitated. But what? The baby's body temperature indicated he'd been gone for quite some time, longer than a quick shower. And there were some concerning things the doctors noted. But since there was no autopsy ordered— No autopsy? I nearly shouted. Why not? The mother refused. She had the right to refuse, and she did. Very adamantly. She wanted the body cremated immediately. My head was spinning. No autopsy. Immediate cremation. A mother who showed no emotion. Where was he cremated? I asked. Patricia checked her notes. Peaceful Rest Crematorium. The mother made all the arrangements that same evening. That same evening, her baby died, and by nightfall, she was already arranging to destroy any evidence. I drove to Peaceful Rest. The director, a solemn man named Mr. Harrison, checked his records. Yes, Daniel Morrison. Cremated July 20th, 2017. Ashes placed in Forest Glen Memorial Garden, Section C, Plot 147. Who arranged it? The mother. She seemed very efficient. No service. No viewing. Just wanted it done quickly. Paid in cash. I went to Forest Glen that afternoon. The memorial garden was peaceful, filled with small plaques and urns. I found Danny's spot, a tiny bronze marker, with just his name and dates. No beloved son. No forever in our hearts. Just cold facts. The groundskeeper told me something that made my stomach turn. In the 8 months since this plot was placed, no one has visited. Not once. I remember because usually, with children, the parents come weekly, sometimes daily. But this one, never. A mother who never visited her dead child's resting place. I sat by that small marker for hours, talking to Danny, crying, promising him that I'd find out what really happened. When I got home, I did something I should have done earlier. I looked up Miranda on social media. Her Facebook was private, but her Instagram was public. What I saw made me sick. Starting in early August, barely 2 weeks after Danny's death, Miranda had posted photos of herself at fancy restaurants. New clothes, a new car, a white BMW, trips to Miami, Las Vegas, New York, and in many of these photos, she was with a man. A young, handsome man named Marcus, or rather, I'll call him Marcus. The captions were nauseating. New beginnings. Finally living my best life. You only get one chance at happiness. Not a single mention of Danny. Not a single photo of him. It was as if he'd never existed. But the posts from before July were different. Complaints about motherhood, about being trapped, about her youth being wasted. One post from June, just a month before Danny died, said, "Can't wait for this chapter to be over. New life coming soon. New life coming soon." Had she been planning this? I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed help. I remembered that Tommy's old friend from the police academy, Robert Jennings, had retired and opened a private investigation firm. I called him the next morning. "Mrs. Morrison, I heard about Tommy." "I'm so sorry," Robert said when I arrived at his small office downtown. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. I told him everything. He listened, taking notes, his expression growing darker. "Mrs. Morrison, I won't lie to you. This sounds suspicious. Very suspicious. But we need evidence. Hard evidence. Are you sure you want to go down this road? If what you're suspecting is true." "I need to know," I said firmly. "Danny deserves justice." Robert nodded slowly. "Okay, let me start digging. But first, let me ask you something important. Did Miranda take out any life insurance on Danny?" The question hit me like ice water. Life insurance? On a baby? I don't know. It took Robert 3 days to uncover what would become the most damning evidence. "Mrs. Morrison, you need to sit down for this," he said when I arrived at his office. He spread out documents across his desk, insurance policies, bank statements, computer printouts. Miranda took out not one, not two, but 5 separate life insurance policies on Danny, starting when he was just 2 months old. My hand flew to my mouth. 5 policies from 5 different companies, totaling. He paused. $7 million. $7 million. On a baby. "That's not normal, is it?" I whispered. "Normal, Mrs. Morrison, it's virtually unheard of. Most parents might take out a small policy to cover funeral expenses, maybe 50,000, 100,000 tops. But 7 million? And spread across multiple companies to avoid detection. This was premeditated. He showed me the timeline. March 2016. Danny at 2 months first policy for $1.5 million. April 2016. Second policy for $1 million. June 2016. Third policy for $2 million. September 2016. Fourth policy for $1.5 million. November 2016. Fifth policy for $1 million. She spaced them out so no single company would red flag it, Robert explained. Classic insurance fraud setup. But why would the companies approve this? Because she's the mother. She probably claimed she wanted to secure Danny's future, college fund, that sort of thing. Companies don't usually suspect a parent of planning to kill their own child. My stomach churned. "You said planning. You think she planned this from the beginning?" Robert pulled out another document. "Look at this." Danny's birth was in July 2016. The first policy was taken out in March 2016, 2 months later. But look at this search history I recovered from her computer. He'd somehow gotten access to Miranda's browsing history. The searches made my blood run cold. February 2016, Danny at 1 month old. Life insurance for infants. Maximum life insurance amount for baby. Side statistics. Suffocation accidents in cribs. May 2016. How long does life insurance investigation take? Accidental death insurance payout. Do they autopsy babies who die of SIDS? July 2017, the week Danny died. Baby suffocation, how long? Sleeping pills, safe amount for infant. How to refuse autopsy. Emergency 911 response time. She researched it, I breathed. She actually researched how to kill him. It gets worse, Robert said grimly. He pulled up bank statements. Look at what happened after Danny's death. The timeline was chilling. July 25th, 2017. 1 week after Danny died, Insurance claim filed with company A July 27, 2017. Claim filed with company B July 30, 2017. Claims filed with companies C, D, and E August 15, 2017. First payout received 1.5 million August 18, 2017. Second payout 1 million August 22, 2017. Third payout 2 million August 28, 2017. Fourth payout 1.5 million September 1, 2017. Final payout $1 million. She collected all $7 million within 6 weeks of Danny's death, Robert said. And look what happened next. He showed me her spending records. August 20th, luxury shopping spree, $15,000. August 23rd, plastic surgery consultation, $8,000. August 30th, BMW purchase, $65,000. September 5th, first class tickets to Miami, $4,000. September 15th, designer handbags, $12,000. She was living it up on her dead son's insurance money. There's more, Robert said. I've been following her. She's been dating this new guy, Marcus Patterson. Guess what she convinced him to do last month? I could barely speak. What? Take out a $2 million life insurance policy. With her as the beneficiary. The room spun. She was doing it again. Planning another murder. We have to stop her, I said. We have to go to the police. We will. But first, I want to get one more piece of evidence. I managed to get surveillance footage from her apartment building from the day Danny died. You need to see this. He pulled up grainy security camera footage on his laptop. July 18, 2017, 10:15 a.m. Miranda, leaving her apartment with Danny in a stroller. The baby was clearly alive, moving his arms. 11:45 a.m., Miranda returning with shopping bags. Danny appeared to be sleeping in the stroller. 1:30 p.m., Miranda leaving again alone this time. No baby. 2:50 p.m., Miranda returning with a pharmacy bag. She left him alone for over an hour, I said. But the death report said she found him at 4:15 p.m. Exactly. Now watch this. Robert fast-forwarded to 4:10 p.m. Miranda exited her apartment, went to her car, got something from the trunk, then went back inside. What was she doing? I don't know. But 7 minutes later, she called 911. He played the audio of the 911 call. Miranda calm, almost rehearsed. Yes, I need an ambulance. My baby isn't breathing. Dispatcher. Ma'am, what's your address? How old is the baby? Miranda still eerily calm. He's 1 year old. I just came out of the shower and found him like this. Dispatcher. Is he breathing at all? Miranda, no. I don't think so. Dispatcher, ma'am, I need you to start CPR. I'll walk you through it. Miranda, I don't know how. Just send someone, please. No panic. No crying. Just matter-of-fact reporting, like she was calling about a broken appliance. Robert stopped the playback. The pharmacy bag she came back with? I checked with the pharmacy. She'd picked up a prescription for adult sleeping medication, prescribed to her, but she asked the pharmacist very specific questions about dosage and effects. You think she gave sleeping pills to Danny? I think she sedated him, then suffocated him, then waited long enough to make sure he was gone before calling 911. The medical examiner said he'd been dead for 1 to 2 hours before the call. That matches perfectly. I felt like I was going to be sick. My sweet Danny, helpless, unable to fight back. While his own mother. There's one last thing, Robert said gently. I found Miranda's personal diary. She kept it on her computer. Probably thought it was private. He pulled up a document. The entries were dated July 14th, 2017, the day before Danny's first birthday, one more day. Just one more day, and then freedom. The party tomorrow, then Wednesday, and then it's all over. Finally, 7 million is worth it. Finally free. July 18th, 2017, the day of Danny's death. It's done. Easier than I thought. He just went to sleep and didn't wake up. Called 911 at the right time. Cried a little for the paramedics, but they seemed to buy it. No autopsy, thank God I stood my ground on that. By Friday, this will all be behind me. July 22nd, 2017, first payment should clear next week. Already looking at condos. Marcus doesn't suspect anything. He thinks I'm just a young widow who got a settlement. Perfect. I couldn't read anymore. Tears were streaming down my face. She killed him, I sobbed. She murdered her own baby for money. Robert's jaw was tight. Yes, ma'am. She did. And now we're going to make sure she pays for it. He gathered all the documents into a folder. I'm taking this to the district attorney first thing tomorrow morning. With this evidence, they'll have to investigate. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tommy, about how he'd worked overtime to pay child support for a son he couldn't even see, about how he'd kept that notebook full of Danny's milestones, treasuring every scrap of information he could get. He never knew his son was in danger, never knew the mother of his child was a monster. But tomorrow, justice would begin. Robert kept his word. The next morning, we met with Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Walsh at the county courthouse. She was a sharp woman in her 40s, with steel gray eyes that missed nothing. We spent 3 hours going through every piece of evidence. Robert had organized it meticulously: the insurance policies, the bank records, the search history, the diary entries, the 911 call, the pharmacy records, everything. When we finished, ADA Walsh sat back in her chair, her expression grim. Mrs. Morrison, I want you to understand something. This is one of the most disturbing cases I've seen in 20 years of prosecution. Your daughter-in-law didn't just kill your grandson. She planned it methodically, executed it coldly, and profited from it shamelessly. She tapped the folder. With this evidence, I'm going to seek first-degree murder charges. But I need to warn you, this is going to be hard. Are you prepared for a trial? For seeing her face? For hearing the details? I'm prepared to do whatever it takes, I said firmly. Danny deserves justice. Then let's get her. 2 days later, I got the call. Miranda had been arrested at her luxury condo. She'd been with Marcus at the time, planning a trip to the Bahamas. The police found more incriminating evidence during the search of her apartment. The sleeping medication still half full, a second diary hidden in her closet with even more damning entries, and on her computer, new searches from just last week: life insurance accidental death clause, staged car accident statistics, hiking accidents survivability. She'd been planning to kill Marcus, too. The arraignment was quick. Miranda pleaded not guilty, of course. Her lawyer claimed everything was circumstantial, that she was a grieving mother being persecuted. But the judge saw through it. Bail was denied. Miranda would await trial in county jail. Over the next 8 months, I attended every pretrial hearing. I watched Miranda's lawyer try every trick, claiming the evidence was obtained illegally, that her diary was creative fiction, that the insurance policies were just a coincidence. None of it worked. Ada Walsh was relentless, methodical, devastating. Finally, in March 2018, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. The case had made national news. Mother accused of murdering son for insurance money. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but reporters lined the hallways. I sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table, with Danny's photo clutched in my hand. Every day of that trial, I made sure I was there, made sure Miranda had to see me, had to be reminded of what she'd done. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Day 1, opening statements. Ada Walsh laid out the entire timeline, from the first insurance policy to Danny's death to Miranda's spending spree. The jury looked horrified. Day 2, 3, the insurance investigators testified. They explained how unusual it was to have multiple policies, how Miranda had lied on applications, claiming each policy was her only one. Day 4. The pharmacy technician testified about Miranda's questions regarding sleeping medication dosing. Day 5. The 911 dispatcher played the call. The courtroom was silent as Miranda's emotionless voice filled the room. Several jurors looked disgusted. Day 6, the emergency room doctor and nurse. Patricia, the nurse I'd spoken to, was particularly effective. In my 15 years in emergency medicine, I have never seen a parent so calm when their child has died. She asked me where the cafeteria was. Day 7. The digital forensics expert showed the jury Miranda's search history. Projected on a large screen, those searches were damning. How long does baby suffocation take? Sleeping pills undetectable in infant. Refuse autopsy rights. Day 8, the medical examiner. He testified that while he couldn't perform an autopsy due to Miranda's refusal, the emergency room findings were consistent with sedation, followed by asphyxiation. The child's stomach contents, what we could test from the ER, showed traces of diphenhydramine, an adult sleep aid, at levels that would have heavily sedated a child that size. Day 9. Robert Jennings presented the surveillance footage and explained the timeline. The jury watched Miranda leave Danny alone, return with pharmacy bags, then calmly call 911 almost an hour after the medical examiner estimated time of death. Day 10, the diary entries. Ada Walsh read them aloud, and I watched Miranda's face turn bright red. She was furious, not remorseful, angry that her private thoughts had been exposed. Day 11, Marcus Patterson, Miranda's boyfriend, testified that she'd convinced him to take out a large life insurance policy and had been pushing for them to take adventure trips involving risky activities. She wanted to go cliff diving, bungee jumping, whitewater rafting in dangerous areas. I thought she was just adventurous, but now. Day 12, the bank records. A forensic accountant showed how Miranda had spent $200,000 in just 2 months after Danny's death. Designer clothes, jewelry, luxury vacations, plastic surgery. Then came the defense's turn. Miranda's lawyer tried everything. Claim 1. Miranda was suffering from postpartum depression and wasn't thinking clearly when she took out the policies. Rebuttal expert witness testified that postpartum depression doesn't cause methodical insurance fraud over a 10-month period. Claim 2. The diary was just creative writing, fantasy. Rebuttal. The dates matched exactly with real events, and other diary entries about mundane daily activities proved it was a genuine diary, not fiction. Claim 3. Danny's death was a tragic accident, and Miranda's calm demeanor was due to shock. Rebuttal. The sleeping medication, the research history, and the fact that she went shopping 2 days later disproved the shock theory. Finally, on day 15th, Miranda took the stand in her own defense. It was a disaster for her. "Mrs. Miranda Morrison, did you love your son?" Ada Walsh asked. "Of course I loved him," Miranda said. But her voice was flat, unconvincing. "Then why did you take out $7 million in life insurance on a baby?" "I wanted to secure his future." "By multiple policies you lied about to each company?" "I didn't lie. I just didn't mention the others." Mrs. Morrison, why did you search baby suffocation how long on your computer? I was worried about SIDS. I was researching. You were researching or planning? Objection! Her lawyer shouted. But the damage was done. Miranda's answers were too practiced, too cold. When Ada Walsh showed her the diary entries, Miranda actually tried to claim someone else must have written them. On her password-protected computer, in her handwriting style. The jury didn't buy it. Day 16 closing arguments. Ada Walsh's closing was powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the evidence. This wasn't a tragedy. This wasn't an accident. This was murder, plain and simple. Miranda Morrison saw her son not as a child to love, but as an asset to cash in. She planned his death for months, executed it coldly, and then celebrated with shopping sprees and vacations while her baby's ashes sat forgotten in a cemetery she never visited. She showed no remorse, no grief, no humanity, and she was already planning to do it again to another victim. You must hold her accountable. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. I sat in that courtroom, hands clasped, praying for justice. When they filed back in, none of them looked at Miranda, always a good sign for the prosecution. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud? Guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of Marcus Patterson? Guilty. Miranda's face went white. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook it off. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Miranda with undisguised contempt. Mrs. Morrison, in my 30 years on the bench, I have never encountered such calculated evil. You murdered your own child, a helpless infant, who trusted you, depended on you, loved you for money. Not for survival, not out of desperation, but for luxury handbags and vacations. You planned it, executed it, and felt no remorse. You were already planning your next victim. You are a danger to society and deserve no mercy. I hereby sentence you to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. Miranda screamed. Actually screamed. I didn't do it. This is wrong. I'm innocent. But the bailiffs dragged her away, still protesting, still denying. I sat in that courtroom long after everyone had left, crying tears of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but Danny was still gone. After the trial ended, I thought I'd feel closure. They always say that in movies the family gets closure after justice is served. But sitting in my empty house that night, I didn't feel closed. I felt hollow. Danny was still gone. Tommy was still gone. And I was still alone. For weeks I couldn't shake the depression. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., replaying everything in my mind. What if I'd pushed harder to see Danny? What if I'd suspected something sooner? Could I have saved him? My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, noticed I wasn't doing well. She'd see me sitting on my porch at odd hours, staring at nothing. "Margaret," she said one afternoon, bringing over a casserole I probably wouldn't eat. "You need to talk to someone. This guilt you're carrying, it's not yours to bear." I should have known, I said. I should have protected him. How? You didn't know where he was. She made sure of that. Miranda isolated that baby, and she did it deliberately. You did everything a grandmother could do. But her words didn't ease the pain. Then, about a month after the trial, I got an unexpected visitor. It was Marcus Patterson, Miranda's almost victim. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, standing awkwardly at my door. "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to thank you in person. If you hadn't uncovered the truth about Danny, I'd probably be dead now too. I invited him in. We talked for hours. He told me how Miranda had love-bombed him, how she'd seemed perfect at first, how she'd slowly isolated him from friends and family while convincing him to make her his life insurance beneficiary. She had the whole next year planned out, he said. She wanted us to go skydiving, scuba diving in cave systems, mountain climbing in dangerous areas. Every adventure she suggested was actually a potential accident waiting to happen. He showed me texts she'd sent him from jail before the trial, trying to convince him she was innocent. They were chilling, sweet, and manipulative, claiming she was being framed, that she loved him, that they'd be together again if he'd just support her. I almost believed her, Marcus admitted. She was that good at lying. But then I remembered she told me she'd never been married, never had kids. She erased Danny from her entire history, like he never existed. What kind of person does that? We both knew the answer. Before Marcus left, he said something that stayed with me. Mrs. Morrison, Danny may be gone, but his story saved my life. That has to mean something. Maybe it did. That conversation planted a seed. If Danny's death could save Marcus, maybe it could help others too. I started volunteering at a local organization called Second Chances, a group that helped children in foster care and kids from abusive homes. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd go to their community center and read stories, help with homework, or just listen. These kids reminded me of Danny in a way. They deserved love and safety, but fate had dealt them cruel hands. Unlike Danny, though, they still had a chance. There was one boy in particular, a 7-year-old named David, who reminded me so much of my Tommy at that age. Quiet, thoughtful, with sad eyes that had seen too much. David had been removed from his mother's care after she'd left him alone for 3 days while she went gambling in Atlantic City. He'd survived on crackers and tap water, too scared to leave the apartment. I spent extra time with David. We'd work on puzzles together. And slowly, he started to open up. "Miss Margaret," he asked one day, "do you have kids?" I hesitated, then decided to tell him the truth. I had a son. His name was Tommy. He died in a car accident. Was he nice? The nicest. He would have loved to meet you. Did you have grandkids? My throat tightened, but I answered honestly. I had a grandson named Danny. He died when he was very young. David processed this. That's really sad. I'm sorry. Thank you, sweetheart. But you still come here to help kids like me, even though you're sad. Especially because I'm sad, I said. Danny can't be here, but you are. And you deserve someone to care about you. David gave me a hug the first time he'd initiated physical contact with anyone, his social worker later told me. In that moment, I felt a tiny crack in the ice around my heart. I also started a campaign for stronger laws around child life insurance. I met with state legislators, sharing Danny's story, pushing for regulations that would prevent parents from taking out multiple large policies on young children. It was hard, reliving the trauma over and over in legislative hearings. But in 2019, Danny's Law was passed in our state. It capped life insurance on children under 5 at $100,000 total across all policies and required insurance companies to cross applications. Would it save every child? No, but it might save some. And that was worth fighting for. I also worked with Robert Jennings to create educational materials for emergency room, staff, and pediatricians about warning signs of child abuse and insurance fraud schemes. We held seminars, wrote articles, spoke at conferences. Danny's death had meaning now. It was preventing other deaths. As for Miranda, I heard she was adapting to prison life with her characteristic cold calculation. She'd already filed multiple appeals, all denied. She tried to give interviews to news stations, claiming her innocence, but most outlets refused to give her a platform. I never visited her, never wrote to her. I had nothing to say to the woman who'd murdered my grandson. But I did visit Danny's memorial site every week. I'd bring fresh flowers, sit on the bench nearby, and talk to him. Tell him about the kids I'd helped that week, about the progress on Danny's law, about how his uncle Marcus, as I'd come to think of Marcus Patterson, who'd become a good friend, was doing. 1 year after the trial, on what would have been Danny's 3rd birthday, I organized a memorial event at Forest Glen. We planted a cherry tree near his plot. Cherry trees were Tommy's favorite. Dozens of people came: Marcus, Robert, Ada Walsh, Patricia the nurse, families from Second Chances, even some of the legislators who'd supported Danny's law. We released balloons and shared stories about how Danny's brief life had sparked change. Danny never got to grow up, I said through tears, but his legacy is growing. Every child we help, every life we save, every law we change, that's Danny's gift to the world. It wasn't closure. I don't think you ever get closure when you lose a grandchild this way. But it was peace of a sort. I learned that grief doesn't end, but it transforms. The sharp, stabbing pain becomes a dull ache. The overwhelming sorrow becomes gentle melancholy. You don't move on, you move forward, carrying your loved ones with you. Tommy would have been proud of what I'd done for Danny. I like to think they're together now, wherever souls go. Tommy finally got to hold his son, to watch him grow in some better place where mothers don't kill their babies for money. And me? I'm 71 now. My hair is completely white, my hands are arthritic, and my knees protest every time I kneel to garden. But I'm still here, still fighting, still loving the children who need someone in their corner. Last week, David, now 11 years old and thriving in a loving adoptive home, came to visit me. He's on the honor roll, plays soccer, and wants to be a doctor someday. Miss Margaret, he said, helping me plant tulip bulbs in my garden. I never thanked you properly. For what, sweetheart? For being there when no one else was. For making me feel like I mattered. I hugged him tight. You do matter, David. You matter so much. As I watched him ride his bike home, I thought about Danny, about how he never got the chance to ride a bike, to go to school, to grow up and make a difference in the world. But in a way, he is making a difference. Every life I touch in Danny's memory. Every child I help in his name. That night, I wrote in my journal a habit I'd picked up from therapy. Dear Danny, today I helped 3 kids at Second Chances learn to read. I testified at another legislative hearing for stronger child protection laws, and I visited your tree. The cherry blossoms are starting to bud. It's going to be beautiful this spring. I still miss you every single day. I still wonder what kind of man you would have become. Would you have your daddy's kindness, his work ethic, his love of baseball? But I'm not just grieving anymore. I'm honoring you. Every day, in small ways, I'm making sure your short life meant something. Your great-grandmother used to say that some people leave the world better than they found it, not by how long they live, but by how they inspire others to love. You were here for only 1 year, sweet boy, but you've inspired more love, more change, more justice than some people who live to be 100. I'll keep fighting for you, for all the Dannys out there who need someone to fight for them. Until we meet again, Grandma. I closed the journal and looked at Danny's photo on my nightstand, that sweet, smiling face, with the bright eyes and chubby cheeks. Good night, baby boy, I whispered, turning off the light. Grandma loves you. Outside, the stars were shining. Somewhere among them, I like to think, Danny was shining too. And tomorrow, I'd wake up and keep fighting, because that's what grandmothers do. We protect our babies, even after they're gone.